Now, let's look at Revelation 2, verse 8 to 11. And this is the persecuted church, Smyrna. Again, I have a link there to pictures, another website that has more information and pictures of the modern day Smyrna and the archaeology and everything like that. I'll put it on the link also. And those that futurists, they put somewhere around this time from 100 to 312 AD, the time that they can look in the church history that there was a lot of persecution, and it connects with this church. So we'll look at Smyrna now. Now again, Jesus is clear who this principally this letter is focused to first place, to an actual church that was in Asia Minor, Smyrna. It says in Revelation 2:8, and unto the angel of the church in Smyrna write. And so we're going to look at what he wrote to an actual church in Smyrna, and that's going to apply to us as individuals, as a marriage couple, as a family, and as a church. And before we get into that, again, we'll look at the history of this place. Smyrna was about 50 miles north of Ephesus, 30 miles inland. It was celebrated for its schools of science, medicine, and some buildings. And geographically, location of it, and on the slope of Mount Pagus, there was a theater which seated 20,000 spectators. In 23 AD, the temple was built in honor of Emperor Tiberius and his mother Julia. And the Golden Street, which connects the temples of Zeus and Cybele, another god, is said to have been the best in an ancient city. So that's some of the things about this city in Smyrna. And again, a lot of cities in this area, apparently it was on the fault line, an earthquake fault line, suffered from earthquakes between 178 and 80 AD, 180 AD. But somehow it always escaped entire destruction. Now, it was destroyed by the Lydians, and for about 3 centuries it was a village until again Alexander the Great conquered it again and reestablished the city. Another thing, Polycarp, who was a disciple of John, was burned to death here later on in 100 something AD. And modern day, its name is Izmir, which is a city in Turkey, about 4 million people. It was destroyed by a fire in 1922, which resulted in fleeing of thousands of Greek Orthodox and Armenian Christians. So all this time, there was a Christian presence to about that time, 1922. There probably is some Christians left in Smyrna, or what today is called Izmir, in the country of Turkey. So that's a little bit of a historical background of this Smyrna. Now again, Jesus shows himself in a descriptive way to each church differently. And here he says to the Smyrna, these things saith the first and the last, which was dead and is alive. And it's very interesting. We looked at the history that this city went through a lot of earthquakes, and but it never was totally destroyed, and it was conquered, but never really destroyed. It came back. And so again, we have the description of Jesus. Same thing that you're going through in the physical, there's a connection there. I was dead and is alive, first and the last. Very interesting how each church he describes that way. So we see also the commendation. What was this church doing that was good, pleasing before God? Revelation 2:9, it says, I know thy works, and tribulation, and poverty. Wow. But thou art rich. That's amazing. And know the blasphemy of them which say they are Jews, and are not, but are the synagogue of Satan. So, wow. This is some great commendation, but it's very interesting. There's tribulation. They're working hard. But they were, materially speaking, poor. They didn't have the the resources. Like, let's say the church in Ephesus was a booming church, had the activities, had the programs and everything, but this church didn't have all this stuff. But yet they were working hard and they were going through tribulation. But God says they're rich. That's amazing. And again, the synagogue of Satan, there's apparently a lot of Jews in this city. And so this church was facing persecution, trials, suffering, and tribulation. And like I said again, re-emphasize they were materially poor, but spiritually rich. And that's important to note. The counsel or the promise. So basically, there's no negative things about this church. And we see that today in a lot of countries where the church is being persecuted. God is pleased with the people there, because you know what? Where there's heavy persecution, people don't have time for secondary things. They're just focusing on God, humbling before God, praying to God, give us our daily bread, not have a bank account that's full of so much money that they don't have time to pray. They got so many things to do. But if you are praying, God, give us this day our daily bread, or things like that, daily, they had time to pray with God because they need it. They're going through persecution. They're going through suffering, tribulation. A lot of them being martyred. And it says here the counsel, Revelation 2:10, fear none of those things which thou shalt suffer. Behold, the devil shall cast some of you into prison, that ye may be tried, and ye shall have tribulation 10 days. And later on, in the next slide, I'm going to show an interpretation about this 10 days, because in the Bible, there's connection between one day could be a year. And we'll look at the Roman emperors during that time, the 10 greatest persecutions. So that could be an interpretation. And the futurist, if you're looking at it as a futurist point of view, then this fits perfectly into that. And it says, be thou faithful unto death, and I will give thee a crown of life. 2:11. He that hath an ear, let him hear what the Spirit saith unto the churches. He that overcometh shall not be hurt of the second death. Basically, second death is Revelation 20, the lake of fire, where the dragon, the beast, and the false prophet are thrown into the lake of fire, and everybody else that follows them disobeys God, not written in the book of the Lamb. So, what can we take from this church, or this message to Smyrna? Is, you know what? Work hard for God. And it doesn't matter if we don't have full resources, believe in God, keep working for Him. Even if you face tribulation, suffering, trials, be steadfast. Whatever, and even up to death, it talks about, wow, God gave us the strength, especially in churches here in the Western Hemisphere, and especially North America, because really there's not huge persecution like other countries that's unto death. And so we need God to help us increase our faith, and so we can speak with boldness in season and out of season, and to do the things which please God. So again, we're looking at Smyrna, chapter 2, Revelation verse 8 to 11, and the previous slide we looked at one of the things that Jesus says that in verse 10 of chapter 2, that ye shall have tribulation 10 days. An interpretation could be that these 10 days represent the 10 periods of harsh persecution by 10 Roman emperors. Basic 10 major Roman emperors of persecution during this time, from about the time when the book of Revelation was written to the time of Constantine, when actually there was a merger between the state and church and the Roman Empire, and then later became the Holy Roman Empire, the Roman Catholic Church. So there was a mix between religion and state and religion. But so we have the 10 big ones there. These aren't during that time from AD 95 and AD 305. There were more emperors, but these are the major ones because there was a lot of emperors that only lived several months, 1 or 2, 3 years, things like that, because there was people, they would be overthrown, some would be poisoned, some would be assassinated, some would be killed. But these are the major ones that lived, actually ruled 13, 15, 20 years, and so they had time to have some consistency in terms of their reign. So we have Domitian. He was the first one that had a cruel um, persecution. Obviously, before this, it was 60, 64. Around that time, it was Nero, but that was before the writing of the book of Apocalypse. So that's why we're taking Domitian first. Trajan, again, 98 to 117. Hadrian, 117, 138. Antonius Pius, 138 to 161. Marcus Aurelius, AD 161 to 180. Septimus Severus, 191 to 211. Maximin, 235 to 238. Decius, 249 to 51. Valerian, 253 to 60. Diocletian, 284 to 305. And around 300, 300 and something, there was like when the Christians had some religious freedom, and then obviously when Constantine came into the throne, after he had that vision of the cross, and then he painted that cross on his army, and they had the victory. Then he merged the state with the religion, and he gave religious freedom to the Christians. And then we'll look at later on other events in one of the other churches periods that'll deal with that. So that's just an interpretation that we can look into the 10 days.